And speaking of 5 rounds, what in the hell are we still doing that for? That is one strange thing, and I had made a comment about this a while ago, and I think it was Cree, but somebody had posted it for the kids on the underground, and there was a little bit of a back and forth, and there was a lot of pushback. My general argument was, hey, we have to do away with the 5-round fights. When a commission comes forward, and what does a commission want? They want the revenue. But what does a commission say that they want? They say that our number one job is fighter safety. When you look at the safety of the fighters, by leaving them in there for 25 minutes and 5 full rounds, it's pretty tough to make that argument. It makes it pretty tough to make that claim. And you could look at it from any level that you want. And when I saw some of the kids weighing on the underground, they were taking the stance of, oh my gosh, I love watching 5-round fights. Those championship rounds add another element. And those championship rounds are so fun. And looking back at some of the memories of some of the great fights I have, I'd be so disappointed if those weren't 5 rounds. You're coming at it from a selfish standpoint of what you liked to watch from your living room on TV. I'm coming at you from a little bit more sophisticated standpoint of telling you it is not safe for the fighters to be out there that long. I then offer you as evidence, okay, 2 weeks ago, as evidence, I offered you simply the last 5-round fight that we had seen, which was Robert Whittaker versus Yoel Romero. Neither fighter has fought since because they were injured in that fight, not hurt. There's a big difference in hurt and injured. They were both injured in that fight. So I didn't go back any further in my historical data to form this premise and hypothesis than the last time we saw it. Pretty hard to argue against, yet some kids on the underground still did. So now I sit before you today, and I think we can all agree that Yair and the Zombie was 5 rounds. I'm well aware that it ended with exactly 1 second left, but let's just concede that that was a 5-round fight. And let's see, and only time will tell, but I will predict now that we don't see either of them back for a meaningful period of time. And I think that is a very cold and callous argument for somebody to make, to say, yes, but I was entertained and I had fun watching that, when 2 guys' careers are now put on hold and they're jeopardized and they don't get to come back, and they don't get to come back in a timely fashion. And I'm not a crusader on this point, so this isn't you against me. And it's not my point. I don't want, my popularity to, and so then people come in and go, yeah, let's do away with it. Or people go, I don't like Chael, so I don't like his argument. Just saying this. Let's just have a fair debate on it. It does seem a little bit bizarre that in this sport, if it's a championship fight, the time would change. That in and of itself is weird. In no sport, on no level. And that's a huge statement. From the time you're in Little League, and I'm also, so any level, through junior high, through high school, through college, off onto the pros, and in any sport, in any organization, the NFL, the NHL, NBA, NCAA, Division I, Division II, Division III, high schools, junior colleges, Olympic Games, World Championships, any organization, any sport. You don't change the parameters once it's for the gold medal. It simply doesn't work that way. In the NBA playoffs, they don't go out there and play 5 quarters. The Super Bowl is not 5 quarters. The World Cup is not 3 halves. That's not the way that it works. So how this ever started in our sport in the first place, that, okay, now you've got to do your sport and you've got to prove your point. But you've got to prove it for 80% more time or it doesn't count. I think that you first have to tackle that just on a logical narrative. But then I do think there is something to be looked at, that when you're putting 2 trained killers in there that are beating people up under extremely limited rules, why are they having to do it for so long when we're confronted with the evidence that should you meet that duration, guys are leaving injured? Significant difference. Go out and try to do damage. We're in the hurt business. We're not in the injury business. And I don't like that narrative. And I just think that it's something that needs to be looked at. And people that stand back and are entertained by that, or they want to see guys out there for an hour, this is silly. That's not what you want. You don't really want that. Even the fans really don't want to see that. It has been the death to boxing. My argument would be one, and I'm largely making this statement for you guys, but then I'm seeing the debate on the underground. So the kids on the underground will take this in multiple different directions if I give them the opportunity to. I don't want to do that. I want to limit the scope to your argument of simply being fighter safety. And if you have a counter to the fact that the last time we've seen a 5-round contest, which was Yoel versus Whitaker, and neither of them has been in the ring since because they were injured, I would love to hear how you think that that doesn't deserve review. And now that we've seen the zombie in Yair, it appears to me that this is something, and only time will tell, but I have a prediction that neither of them is going to be in there anytime soon. And I just would offer to you that perhaps this warrants review. That's all I want to make the scope of the argument on. I will extend it for conversational purposes, but not for ammunition for anybody to fire back on, that it's also not very much fun for a fan. And while you could point to a few fights that were really fun to watch for that long, I could too. Certainly there were. If you look at the sport of boxing, this has been the death of boxing. Boxing has not even figured this out yet. The death of boxing is the boringness of the sport. No other sport has to be promoted. Every other sport, you can just put it on TV. That's it. The power of television will sell the tickets, build the enthusiasm, and fill up an arena. You can fill up the beer cups and you can pop the popcorn. In boxing, it has to be promoted with B-roll and trailers and press conferences because the sport is so damn boring. I say this to you as a boxer. I box every single day. I wrestle as well. And I'm well aware of the problems we have bringing in crowds in wrestling. People can find it boring. So this isn't coming to you from somebody that doesn't enjoy the sport. I do enjoy it. I just also realize some of the downfalls that it has. And boxing, who has always been top-heavy with just a main event, only a featured fight. Right, we're seeing a boxing promoter, and Oscar De La Hoya, get in the MMA business, and he's following that model. He's got one fight on top of the bill and nothing else to watch all night long. It's a different deal in MMA. It's shorter matches. It's much more exciting with much more to look forward to. In boxing, where they're top-heavy, they run into the problem of what do I do when I fill up an arena and people took a night off and people paid a premium for tickets? What do I do if there's nothing for them to watch? So I need to schedule a 12-round contest. I can focus it top-heavy, but people can then justify parting with their money and their time to come in and watch something that may or may not go the better part of an hour with introductions and walkouts. If boxing would shorten its time to something more reasonable, something that people want to see, load cards up with multiple things to watch, they would much greater serve their industry. There's 1 to 2 big boxing fights a year because there's only a couple of boxing stars. And the reason that nobody's a star is unless you can make it to the main event, you can't get any level of promotion. Now, that is for the business and for them to figure out on their own. But one of the driving forces that have created this entire domino effect that has prevented boxing from building stars and from giving you an entire night to look forward to, and just one match, is the duration of the rounds. If the main event did not have the opportunity to be 36 minutes of competition, 48 minutes with breaks, and an hour with walkouts and announcements, if it didn't even have that opportunity, it would force the industry and force the promoters to offer you something else special to watch. A co-main event, an undercard. It would elevate and promote all of the guys in the back, not just the two that made it to the last fight of the evening. That's a discussion and something that should be considered, but it needs to be looked at as well. It needs to be looked at the same as MMA. We do not need to make this long and drawn out and boring from a viewer perspective. And I always love when somebody will come out and argue with me and go, but I like it. What kind of objectivity do you have? I can prove to you through evidence without opinion. Opinions lie and so do people, but numbers don't. I can prove to you through the numbers that are sitting in the live arena that do not come until the main event walks out, that people as a whole don't like it. But I'll always have that kid on the internet that weighs in on the underground and tells you his opinion. Your opinion versus the facts of the numbers. That separates a critical thinker, somebody who's fair and objective and looking to move things forward, from the rest. Boxing would be better served, and always would have been better served, to be shorter. From the beginning of time, boxing announcers have had to cover the boringness that is a boxing fight by telling you they are feeling each other out, of which there is no such thing. There is no such thing as a feeling out process. There has never been a coach or a trainer in the history of the world that has gone into a boxing gym and explained to his athlete how to feel the opponent out. There is no such thing. There are two fighters that are well aware that they have signed a ridiculous contract to do a ridiculous thing. They have an unspoken agreement to burn up a number of rounds before they go and get into it. In MMA, we don't see that. We see two guys going after it. Two guys that are incentivized to stop the fight. Two guys that are incentivized to make sure they get the win. Two guys that are incentivized to be entertaining. Those athletes are living up to their expectations. They are absolutely delivering for the fans. So now it is incumbent that the fans offer something back, which is, guys, we're not going to leave you in there for the better part of a half hour. There is no point. We do not need you in the gyms training at that level all of the time. 3 rounds, 5 minutes in duration. 80% more than a boxing round, which is hard. Really hard, is enough. I just think that it's something that needs to be reviewed. And I will make the prediction for you now between Zombie and Yair, who deserve a ton of credit and certainly get it from me and put on a fantastic performance. I would just offer to you as a prediction that we're not going to see either of them for a meaningful period of time. And hopefully it won't be as long of sits and rests as Yoel Romero and Robert Whittaker had to do. But even if it comes remotely close, I think that's too long for two guys that simply went out there and did their jobs.